7 a.m, Sunday the 15th of September, 1940. The Battle of Britain is entering its third month. In Shoreham, Kent, despite the war, it's hop-picking season. Today, the sky is clear. Perfect flying weather. Which means one thing. Hitler's air force, the Luftwaffe, will soon be here.
People in villages like this were about to witness something extraordinary in the skies. The climax of the Battle of Britain. Shoreham was in what was called Bomber Alley. Luftwaffe bombers had to come up this route here from the continent towards London. But barring their way were the Hurricanes and the Spitfires of Fighter Command. The stage was set for what would be the biggest air battle in history to that point.
Hitler is determined that the invasion of Britain will go ahead just days from now. Barges are poised to take German troops across the Channel, but invasion is only possible if the RAF is destroyed first. Today, the Nazis think this is their moment. RAF pilots across the southeast are being monitored from the secret 11 Group bunker beneath Uxbridge, West London, where 19-year-old WAF Joan Fanshawe has begun her shift. After spotting an ad looking for educated young women, just weeks later, Joan is now tracking activity in Bomber Alley. So far this morning, it's been quiet. Then, a lone German aircraft is spotted, checking if weather conditions are suitable for an attack. Joan's position in the ops room is over the hotspot, the Dover to Calais crossing. Her job is to plot the position of every enemy aircraft. There is no room for error.
They had to have intense concentration because there was a lot on the table at one time. Like a croupier, if you describe it, you'd push the blocks across the map.
Right.
At first reading it out from a teleprinter, later on the headphones. But it was all fed through, as you say, and then via Bentley Priory to them. It's all part of the system, and they then fed it out to the airfields, who they then scrambled the aircraft, and of course, the real thick of it took place.
Joan's been keeping a secret diary, recording life at Uxbridge.
It's a marvellous place. Our lives are going to be completely different now.
The thing that strikes me, I mean, I know it's a very obvious thing to say, but she looks so young. I mean, she was a teenager.
19, yes, it is young.
19, and doing a job that proved to be absolutely vital to the success of the Battle of Britain.
"20 miles away at Croydon Airfield, 28-year-old Scottish Hurricane pilot Archie McKellar is gearing up for another punishing day. He's enjoying a typical RAF breakfast of bacon, eggs, cornflakes and coffee with powdered milk. We've already seen how on the 15th of August, Archie shot down 3 Nazi aircraft from his base at Drem in Scotland. Now this ace has moved south with 605 Squadron to help defend London. When he arrives in Croydon, he writes a letter home.
I thought you might like to see this.
Oh, wow.
Why don't you have a read of that?
Wow.
Dearest Dad and Mum, here with the news. Arrived in here safe and sound, and by now we're fairly comfortable as we've taken over 10 little houses just outside the aerodrome.
Oh, wow. It's quite incredible that somebody I've followed and done quite as much research as I can. I've exhausted my research online to actually have something in my hand that he has written.
Yeah.
In his writing, and obviously writing of the time as well. Like, it's very difficult to read. It's incredible. It's lovely to hold this. It's really, really, really nice. I only wish my father could be here today and see this too.
Archie's letter reveals that defending Bomber Alley and keeping the Germans away from London is now the #1 priority.
Fritzy is certainly trying to blow hell out of the big bad city, but is getting a thrashing at the same time. I've now managed to shoot down 3 more bombers and a yellow-nosed ME-109, one of the very super fighter Huns. The boys are all doing very well.
At 10:30, the fragile peace is suddenly shattered. Across the channel in France, Luftwaffe crews receive their orders. Prepare to attack. Radar picks up a signal from enemy aircraft gathering out there across the channel, ready to head in towards Kent. In the 11-group ops room, Joan plots the progress of this vast enemy formation of 300 aircraft. If everything goes the Luftwaffe's way, the invasion of Britain is just a few days away. All they need to do is cripple the RAF. Rare footage records the enemy's preparations.
It's never been seen before on television because it was shot by a German fighter pilot, a man called Gunther Buschen. The Nazis thought the Battle of Britain would be another quick victory, and they actually issued cine cameras to many of the pilots in order to record propaganda for audiences at home. This airfield is actually called Coquelles. It's just outside Calais, and it's a different world to what's going on just on the other side of the channel, but it's not that far away, only about 35 miles from Kent. I'm so used to seeing RAF fighter pilots on the ground and in the air that it's just strange to see their opponents here. It does change the way you think about the Luftwaffe. But for me, they've always been portrayed as the distant, the enemy. You see them being shot down. Here, you develop some sympathy with them because you're watching them smile and lark about just like their adversaries. We know that Gunther's plane was a Messerschmitt 109. It had White 11 written on it. So. Oh, there you go, White 11, that's Gunther's plane.
Despite how familiar they appear, the German pilots have a job to do. To destroy the RAF.
We know that Gunther wasn't just a great cameraman, he was a heck of a fighter pilot as well. He shot down 6 RAF fighters during the Battle of Britain.
And on the 15th of September 1940, Luftwaffe pilots, just like Gunther, are heading for Britain to end the battle once and for all. It's 11:18 a.m. A vast Luftwaffe attack force is getting closer to the Kent coast. RAF Fighter Command orders a mass scramble. 27 RAF squadrons take to the air over northern Kent, waiting.
Here in Dover, observers spot the first wave of Luftwaffe aircraft heading across the channel. They're heading straight up Bomber Alley towards London.
Furious dogfights break out all around, and Archie McKellar leads 605 Squadron into the mass of German aircraft. He shoots down 2, which disappear into the clouds. 12:20. In the skies are around 250 RAF planes, battling to block the incoming enemy onslaught and defend London.
Among them are the Polish pilots of 303 Squadron, including Ludwig Paskiewicz, who's already shot down 4 enemy aircraft during the Battle of Britain. Him and the other Poles are patrolling over Folkestone when they spot an enemy raid. They engage, and in the ensuing battle, 8 Messerschmitts are shot down and 2 Dornier 17s.
And Paskiewicz shoots down one of them.
Despite Paszkiewicz's expertise, the RAF insists the Polish squadron must be led by an English speaker. I've come to the Sikorsky Museum to look at Paszkiewicz's journal. It has an entry in Polish for this day.
What does he have to say about the 15th of September?
Being a typical Pole, he again complains about his leader. He says, for example, his leader didn't see the German aircraft being in the area. And thanks to his maneuvers, the whole squadron broke into pieces. He wasn't very impressed.
Right. So do you think that the Polish pilots, like Ludwig, still felt slightly kind of put out that they had a British commander rather than a Polish commander?
Absolutely. They were questioning their abilities and skills. For them, they were just headless chicken, flying modern aircraft with no experience, especially with no combat experience, whilst most of Polish pilots, including Ludwig, they had massive flying and fighting experience from France and from Poland.
With their aggressive flying, the Polish 303 squadron shot down 126 enemy planes. Other squadrons managed around 90.
"12:30 p.m. The skies are still full of 250 RAF fighters and hundreds of enemy aircraft. On the ground, 5-year-old Raymond Cornwall from Shoreham is watching the action overhead.
So that's the little boy that watched Hitler's Air Force heading to and from London every day.
Yes, afraid so.
And was the village ever attacked specifically?
Yes. Now, this was one morning that I certainly remember. Messerschmitt 109E. It came from the south up through Filston Lane, and it was right just at treetop height. It was very low, and I literally stopped, and it went straight across the village. And as it got as far as the Church Street, it started going, this machine gun right up through the village. And I think that upset one of the people up there. Oh, Joe Suckett, it killed one of his rabbits, but fortunately, no one else was killed.
Dogfights are now being fought all over Kent.
One such dogfight happened after midday when fighting is at its peak. The Spitfire pilot is 21-year-old Tony Lovell of 41 Squadron. On the 15th of September, Tony describes attacking German fighters just as the afternoon began. He writes,
"We broke up to attack Me-109s, which were attacking us. I sighted my 109 turning east and diving. I dived after him and chased him for some 15 miles in and out of clouds."
The attack comes to a head over Adisham Woods near Canterbury. Amazingly, the German pilot that Tony Lovell is chasing also recorded the incident.
The Me-109 was being flown by Luftwaffe pilot Herbert Chopper, and he also left a combat report, and here it is. He says,
During a turn,
We were attacked by Spitfires coming out of the sun. My plane was hit in both wings. I wanted to get back to France, thinking of my fiancée. And I tried to hide in the clouds. However, I was hit by a second burst.
Tony Lovell has critically damaged Chopper's plane. The German pilot has no choice but to bail out.
A third burst hit home. An explosion followed, and I found myself hanging from a parachute. 2 Spitfires circled me. The first pilot saluted, and I did the same.
And these are the woods in which he landed.
Tony Lovell continues fighting until 12:45, helping his squadron claim another 2 German aircraft. By lunchtime on the 15th of September, the Luftwaffe has lost 18 planes, the British 13. Neither side knows if they will end this critical day with victory or defeat. After a morning of high drama, suddenly, all is quiet. The enemy are at bay, and the RAF can pause for breath. In the Uxbridge operations room, 19-year-old Joan Fanshawe finishes her shift, as her secret diary reveals.
September the 15th. On duty till nearly 1 o'clock, because Churchill was upstairs and we could not change over in a blitz.
So would she usually have come off
at 12? Yes, so she was a bit fed up.
I was in a fit because I was going to meet Eva and her father at Hammersmith at 1 o'clock. However, I found they were waiting when I got there. We were going to have lunch when the sirens went, so we had to go to the shelter.
So Churchill was actually at Uxbridge?
He certainly was. There were several days where in her diary she mentions Churchill being there, and even the King and Queen.
And that's all she has to say about it, that Churchill actually scuppered her lunch plans.
That is pretty much what she's saying.
I love your mum.
The juxtaposition between the two, isn't it? Between the extraordinary business of what's going on in her workplace and then trying to fit a social life around it, it being scuppered by an air raid.
And Churchill, in fact, being slightly scuppered by Churchill.
"1,300 hours. At RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire, Flight Sergeant John Hanna is fast asleep. In another few hours, he will be airborne as a rear gunner in a British bomber, a 2-engine plane designed to drop bombs on the enemy.
We all remember the famous speech by Winston Churchill where he praised the role of the fighter pilots during the Battle of Britain. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. But what people tend to forget is in that same speech he goes on to praise the role of bomber command pilots. We must never forget, night after night, our bomber squadrons travel far into Germany, find their targets in the darkness, and inflict shattering blows upon the Nazi power. Churchill was in no doubt of Bomber Command's contribution to victory.
Like Archie McKellar, Sergeant Hanna is a working-class boy from Paisley in Scotland and has been in the RAF for a year. But today is a day that will change his life forever.
On the 15th of September 1940, the 18-year-old John Hanna was on his way in a Hampden bomber to attack the German barges. But there are no Hampdens still left flying today, so I've come up with a very similar aircraft, also a 2-engine bomber from the time, known as a Bristol Blenheim. They were very restricted inside. They were known as the flying suitcase. And we're off. And we're off. So John Hanna was a wireless operator and a machine gunner, apparently.
Yeah, so he would have been in the rear in this aeroplane.
How dangerous was it to be a bomber crew in 1940?
The losses were huge. You know, it was the case they would send the squadrons out to bomb various bridges, and not one of them would come back.
And if they did get struck by enemy fire, was there any chance that the crew might survive?
If they were high enough, they could bail out. There's a bailing out hatch in front of you there, or the pilot would go through the roof. But the chances of doing that successfully were pretty small, and lots of the crews actually simply didn't make that.
After attacking German troop barges near Antwerp in Belgium, John and his crew are battered by heavy anti-aircraft fire.
In the midst of the attack, an incendiary projectile hit the aircraft and exploded inside the bomb compartment. A fire broke out, which immediately engulfed John and the tail gunner's position. Now, in order to fight that fire, you've got to somehow maneuver your way around this tiny aircraft, and that wasn't easy. John started to move around the aircraft, desperately trying to fight the fire. The fuel tanks had been punctured, so there was a danger of it spreading and engulfing the entire aircraft. He found the extinguishers. He used them both up. When the extinguishers had run out, he beat the flames down with his logbook. He looked back and saw the tail gunner had already bailed out of the aircraft. By this stage, the heat was so intense that the aluminium was starting to melt, but he still went on fighting the fire. Ammunition was exploding everywhere. John was nearly blinded by the heat, but he did manage to get the fire under control. An act of extraordinary bravery, heroism, and skill. And he crawled forward to notify the pilot that despite his terrible wounds, the aircraft was safe and they could continue to fly in it.
For his incredible bravery, John Hanna was awarded the Victoria Cross. At 18, he was the youngest recipient in the Second World War. (2 p.m. A second gigantic wave of Luftwaffe aircraft, 550 strong, is crossing the channel.
At the Uxbridge Nerve Centre, plotters are tracking the progress of a huge fleet of German bombers. RAF High Command know that the Luftwaffe are going to throw everything they have at this, their final push to crush the RAF. In turn, the RAF is throwing everything it has at defending London. At one point, Churchill, sitting in his chair up there, turns to Air Vice Marshal Park and asks, "How many aircraft do you have in reserve?" The answer is none.
At 2:25, Fighter Command risks everything. Every pilot takes to the air. Among them is 19-year-old William Hopkin, who we met defending the south coast on the 15th of August. The rest of his squadron have been sent north to rest, but William is considered fit enough to keep flying. So today, he's still on the front line.
So he had no break whatsoever. See, he then continued throughout the busy period of September, right through to the end of battle at the end of October, with no break, no rest, no whatsoever. And then once the battle was over, he then continued through till the following August, September 41, by which time he'd been in the front line and operational daily for over a year, in fact, 14, 15 months. And he was quite clearly exhausted, fatigued, and I suspect, you know, today we probably potentially might be calling it other things to this day. But, you know, I do remember my mother telling me that when she married him in 45, he was skin and bone. He had no weight on him, no flesh on him at all. He smoked like a trooper. He had a dreadful tic, constantly moving his head. all which were obviously indicative of the long-term strain that he was suffering from at that time.
The stress of combat is as high as ever on the afternoon of the 15th of September, as William intercepts a formation of 20 enemy aircrafts over Beachy Head. 3 German bombers are destroyed, but William loses yet another comrade. Despite his experiences, William manages to fight on. But for some pilots that day, the pressure became too much. Dr. Salia Ashan, a former army medic, has found a document revealing the RAF's attitude to those pilots.
So if someone presented with they might have said a nervous illness with psychiatric symptoms, what was the protocol?
Today, we would possibly think of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but that term today had a whole load of different names at that time. One of the things that they describe it as is lack of moral fibre.
And if you were diagnosed with lack of moral fibre, what happened to you?
It was like a death sentence to your career. And within the Air Force itself and beyond, it was like being branded. You were not allowed that normal, natural reaction to a horrific experience.
I think these young men were trapped in a system where they faced death or disgrace.
Yeah.
For most pilots, including the young William Hopkin, there was no choice but to keep flying and fighting. It's 14:30 on the 15th of September. 550 enemy planes are now over Kent. William Hopkin is still fighting. And now Scottish ace Archie McKellar has rejoined the action with 605 Squadron. His combat report reveals the drama unfolding in the skies.
Now, what becomes clear from this report that he wrote at the end of the 15th of September is that it wasn't just one formation that they were taking on, it was 2. So he hit a bomber in that first formation, and then he talks about seeing another formation.
I then noticed Tracer going past my right wing from another Messerschmitt. I dodged him and continued to climb into the sun. By this time, another bomber formation of 24 aircraft was approaching with no obvious fighter escort.
So he carried on a head-on attack again on the leader of the formation and saw his perspex burst and enemy aircraft spun down. Could you imagine what that must have been like?
I can't, no. I just couldn't. It must have been so frightening. But he was so determined.
Yeah.
Such a determined, very, 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 very determined man.
No, I just can't imagine the level of bravery.
It was just something they did, something that they thought that they had to do. They had to protect, they had to protect the country, so that's what they did.
The wave of German aircraft by now stretches for 10 miles and is heading for London. As the RAF attempt to break up the swarm, fierce dogfights break out over Romney Marshes, Maidstone and Dartford. The Polish 303 Squadron is in action over Gravesend, and enemy bombers are now over Surrey. The Nazi High Command believe that now, finally, London is theirs for the taking. But the RAF has a powerful new tactic. A big wing, or super squadron of 56 planes flying in formation at 16,000 feet, now arrives over Maidstone. It is a complete shock to the Luftwaffe pilots, who are now faced with the most British fighters they've ever seen. They scatter. But there is one German fighter pilot who is determined to ensure victory: Luftwaffe ace Adolf Galland.
Leading this gigantic Luftwaffe raid is one of the Luftwaffe's star pilots.
Yeah.
What's he expecting in his fellow pilots when they arrive over London?
Well, they're told that there's about 40 aircraft that they're going to encounter, which Galland always believed was probably highly inaccurate. He estimated there'd be probably twice as many. In fact, there was more than 250 aircraft that they encountered on that day, and that was a total shock.
I mean, it must have been devastating for their morale.
Well, it certainly was, and it was a completely unexpected encounter. The German fighter forces were completely overwhelmed.
Suddenly, the RAF has gained the upper hand, but the next few hours will be critical. It's Sunday, the 15th of September 1940. So far, 2 waves of Luftwaffe bombers, escorted by fighter aircraft, have crossed the Channel to attack London. It's mid-afternoon, and that second wave is pounding Britain's capital city. The German bombers are carrying 120 tons of explosives. But the sheer number of RAF aircraft in the skies inflicts a serious psychological blow against the Luftwaffe, who are facing an unanticipated defensive force. In confusion, the German bombers miss their targets, and their bombs are scattered randomly right across the city. The RAF push back the German raiders with such ferocity that 50 Luftwaffe bombers turn and flee to France. German ace Adolf Galland fights on, notching up his 33rd kill, taking out another Hurricane. But the RAF managed to break up the Luftwaffe's formations. A corner has been turned. The German bombers ditch their bombs in panic as the RAF chase them to the coast. At 3:45, the last enemy bomber disappears from the radar.
By mid-afternoon, the fighting was over for another day. Around 1,500 planes had taken part in the air battles.
The RAF has had serious losses today, 26 planes. But for the Luftwaffe, it's far worse. 56 aircraft destroyed, the most on any day in the Battle of Britain. In Berlin, the alarm bells are ringing. These losses are simply unsustainable.
Stephen, at the end of the day, on the 15th of September 1940, what has the Luftwaffe learned about the RAF?
They were expecting to find the RAF on its knees, and in fact, what they found was a defensive force that appeared to be, and was in fact, stronger than ever before. They'd spent all that time thinking that they were going to destroy them, and they realised that they were just as far away from that goal as they'd been in August when they started. They finally realised that they'd been spending a whole month getting absolutely nowhere. It was a shock.
How important were these young men?
It's quite arresting to actually come across genuinely modest men who simply thought they were doing their duty, which is what Churchill asked the whole country to do. If we but do our duty, people will say, this is their finest hour. And that, for them, I think, in many ways, it was.
"1600 hours, with the skies now clear of Nazi fighters in the operations control room at Uxbridge, the tension eases. Even the Prime Minister, who's been watching the day's events unfold, feels able to leave. And Joan Fanshaw's secret diary records the moment.
There's just a little bit more that comes up later, and that is that when Churchill did disappear, all the girls then went up and found his cigar and carved it up amongst them. So obviously he was, well-known celebrity with his cigar as their Prime Minister, of course, and so it wasn't without some knowledge of where they were.
They would keep little souvenirs of bits of his cigar.
They did indeed.
Funny. How funny.
At the end of her shift, clutching her cigar souvenir, Joan left work and met her friend. She never discussed her war work till much later in her life, but her secret diaries give us a personal insight into those crucial few days.
But for the pilots on both sides of this bitter conflict, the story did not completely end on the 15th of September. Just 12 days later, pilot Ludwik Paskiewicz was shot down. He didn't survive the crash landing in Kent. His family would never see him again.
And do we know whether Paskiewicz's wife and daughter survived the war?
Yes, his wife survived the war. Unfortunately, his daughter died only a year after Paskiewicz's death. She was ill and she passed away in 1941.
For Archie McKellar, it's been a frantic day, but one he has made it through.
I think that the fact that they just went into battle again and again and again, multiple times a day, how they had the mental resilience to do that.
It was incredible. I think absolutely incredible. The enthusiasm as well.
After shooting down 21 enemy aircraft, Archie finally met his end. He was shot down and killed on November the 1st, just 8 hours after the Battle of Britain ended.
Tony Lovell, who had forced Herbert Chopper to parachute into Addisham Woods, died in a crash landing 3 months after the end of the war in Europe. Herbert Chopper spent the next 6 years as a prisoner of war, during which he was married to his fiancée back home by proxy. When he finally returned to Germany after the war, he met his daughter for the first time. John Hannah, awarded the Victoria Cross, aged 18 for bravery, was left physically and mentally scarred by his experiences.
The story has a desperately sad postscript. The following year, he developed tuberculosis, and that forced him to stop flying. He became a taxi driver in desperation to support his wife and 3 small daughters. He lost an unequal struggle in 1947, dying on the 7th of June, aged just 26.
A year after September the 15th, William Hopkin was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross and promoted to Flight Commander. He survived the war, but died in 1971, aged just 49.
General Adolf Galland eventually claimed 104 aerial victories. He survived the war, only dying in 1996. He and many other pilots openly blamed their high command for the Luftwaffe's tactical blunders during the Battle of Britain. Historian David Baker met Galland, who remained forever impressed by the young British and international pilots he faced.
He looked me straight in the eye and he said, "When we came to fight the RAF, we finally had an adversary worthy of us." And that summed it up. And it summed up the approach he had toward all RAF fighter pilots who fought courageously for their side of the battle. And that sustained throughout the war and long afterwards as well, for the remainder of his life. And as further testimony from his words directly here.
I can only express my highest admiration for the British fighter pilots, who, although numerically at a disadvantage, fought bravely and indefatigably. They undoubtedly saved their country in this crucial hour.
The Battle of Britain raged for 113 long and perilous days throughout the summer of 1940.
And in the end, it all came down to this short, almost unassuming document. It was issued by the enemy's high command on the 17th of September 1940. In it, they ordered that plans for Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain, should be verschoben, postponed, until further notice. The history books record that the Battle of Britain officially ended on the 31st of October 1940, but the tide turned on this crucial day, September the 15th.
And although the war would go on for another 4.5 years, it was this moment, this victory, that gave hope that the Nazis may yet be beaten.
And this was a victory of the ordinary people. Not just a few, but the many. The unsung, the forgotten heroes whose bravery and sacrifice ensured that Hitler would never reach these shores. This is their story.